name is Ms. Galloway, and so I do work with a lot of your students. Right now, a lot of our concern or a lot of our increased focus has been on seniors, of course. We do have the December 1st deadline coming up today. So today I was at Carnegie, and so telling seniors who haven't submitted a college app, which is, I think it's only 7, which is really good. I think Carnegie is sitting at about 96% college apps, so that's good. But it's like, hey, what are you doing? You had Thanksgiving break. What's going on? So sitting down with them and encouraging. Also, December 1st is not just the final deadline for like Texas A&M and UT Austin, but for other schools as well. So just meeting with those students and kind of sitting down like, okay, you haven't submitted, what's stopping you from doing that? And so this presentation, if you've been on it, I know this is week 3, but if you've been on any of the other presentations, you might see that some of this stuff might be a little bit of a repeat, but some of the stuff we may have a little bit more of an opportunity to go a bit more in depth about. So if you'd like, we can go ahead and we can push to the next slide. So, oh, there we go. Again, hi, I'm Ms. Galloway. I do have the pleasure of having Carnegie and DeBakey. I have Carnegie Mondays and Wednesdays, DeBakey Tuesdays and Thursdays. And until they can find someone permanently at HSPVA, I have been supporting HSPVA on Fridays. So I do have the, I guess some people like to call it the trifecta, but I will say that Carnegie and DeBakey, they are my favorite schools. And so we'll move to the next slide. First, what we'll talk about is the academic profile. So oftentimes with students, whenever we're talking about building a college list, your safety, your target, your reach schools, I'll often reference something called like an academic profile. Oftentimes the academic profile is anywhere from your GPA, your test scores, demonstrated interest, letters of recommendation, personal statement. We can go to the next one. And so what do colleges typically consider? The primary thing is definitely going to be GPA, their grades. Depending on what types of schools the students are applying to, rank might be considered as well. Also PSAT, I know oftentimes, I think a few students this year actually were semifinalists for the national merit. That's also, so PSAT typically like their sophomore and junior year, that's when we kind of want students to definitely take the test seriously. And then also extracurricular activities play a role as well. Secondary, but still also very important, definitely going to be their essays, personal statements, letters of rec, and then also demonstrated interest. So before your senior year, have you done anything specifically with this campus? Have you done like any summer bridge programs? And we're going to touch on summer bridge programs a little bit more towards the end. I know there were a lot of questions about that from the first week. Next slide. And so how is GPA calculated? For the most part with students, their GPA is essentially their entire high school. So oftentimes when seniors are like, oh, well, I really want to go to this school. Do you think there's a chance of me bringing up my GPA? And oftentimes it's highly unlikely, especially your senior year, just because you have the weight of 9th, 10th, and 11th grade. And so essentially, oftentimes when freshmen are like, well, what do I need to be doing right now to prepare for college? Essentially just maintaining your grades. As we saw on the previous slide, one of the primary things that colleges do look at is your GPA and your grades. And if they're applying to highly selective schools, some of those schools might even ask for like maybe cycle 1 grades. I know a lot of students and parents have been sending us emails about that. And so it's just a matter of just staying on top of their credits. On the next slide, we're going to talk a little bit about weighted and unweighted. So as we know, at Carnegie, most of the students are taking like all AP classes, right? And so whenever we're talking about weighted and unweighted, typically on their transcripts, it will show both. It will say show weighted and unweighted, but what we'll see is that the weighted one is going to be a little bit higher, and that's because they are taking those AP classes and they hold essentially a little bit more weight than a non-AP class or pre-AP class and so forth. And so typically if students have between 97 to 100, of course, that's an A+, even if they have a 94 through a 96, that's a 4.0 as well. And so essentially if a student is wanting to calculate their GPA at the end of a semester, they will just add all these points together and do an average. And so that's typically how their GPA is. And there's also tons of like GPA calculators where they can put their grades in. They can even put their whole transcript in if they wanted to, and they can figure out, okay, I did well this semester. However, I really want this GPA next semester. Like if I make these kind of grades, what kind of GPA will it spit out for me? So if anyone's interested in those kind of resources, I can kind of give you guys links to credible GPA calculators as well. And then, oh, okay, I got a little ahead of myself. I'm sorry. So again, so students, of course, if they are taking those honor, well, not honors classes, but they're taking AP classes and they do really well in them, that which is what we want, it holds a lot more weight than unweighted. And so oftentimes if students kind of bomb an AP class, it definitely does them a little bit more harm than good, because again, it holds a lot more weight. So you failing it, you take a greater hit to your GPA. And so again, as you can see on here, a B typically is a 3.0. However, if they get a B in an AP class, they get like a little bit more of a push. Again, those are very challenging, very rigorous classes. Next slide. Oh, and so that brings me to, again, we talked a lot about SAT, prep, etc. Khan Academy is a really great resource. For one, Khan Academy, it is free. Khan Academy more so prepares students for the content that's going to be on the test. But I do know there's often times where students will use Khan Academy, but they'll also, take Mastery Prep, which those often cost money. But Mastery Prep, Test Masters, those are more so geared towards strategy. So how do we eliminate select choices the quickest? Khan Academy is more so content. Now, the reason why we push Khan Academy so hard is because College Board actually kind of signs off, or they speak very highly of Khan Academy. And as we know, College Board administers AP tests. It administers the SAT test. And so we do really, and it's free. Students, all they have to do is go to, I think now it's Canvas. They just go to Canvas, digital resources, and Khan Academy is there. There's also studies that show that students, even if they just spend maybe, let's say 4 days out of the week, 30 minutes a day on Khan Academy, they can improve their score significantly. So while we do recommend Test Masters, Mastery Prep, and we do understand that those typically cost money as well, Khan Academy is just as sufficient, especially if you have a 9th grader or a 10th grader who's trying to get that national merit score. And it does depend by state. I believe Texas might be a 220. I'll have to verify, but Khan Academy is just as sufficient. So we do highly push that. And on the next slide, the district is also, they're doing kind of Master the Math. And so as a district, I think what they're noticing is that the math portion is kind of challenging for most students. And so these are free. They are online. They are virtual. It's via Microsoft Teams. And I think I sent the flyer out a few weeks ago, but I can resend the link and everything. I believe it's every Tuesday from 5 to 7, if I'm not mistaken, or 5 to 6. And students can get on there with a live tutor, and they will do SAT prep more so geared towards math. But it is free, and it's for all HISD students. So I've been pushing that a lot for a lot of students as well. And so I think this is like the meat and potatoes. So navigating highly selective colleges, oftentimes there's a lot of terminology that's associated with these kinds of schools. A student might be, oh, I'm applying ED here, or I'm just gonna do EA, stuff like that. And I'll kind of walk through a little bit of what that terminology looks like. And so essentially, what do colleges consider? A lot of times at the beginning of the school year, I usually give this kind of activity to students. And so how much weight do they think, or how much weight do you guys think holds more whenever students are applying to highly selective colleges? So just demonstrated interest, and 1 being the most weight, 8 is the least, of course. And on the next slide, it'll kind of actually show the answers. Now, these answers are not set in stone. Of course, it varies by school, right? So for the most part, I think we can all agree that your grades or your GPA, I should say, those hold the most weight. That's what colleges are looking at. Also, they're looking at rigor. We all know a school like Carnegie or your DeBakey's, students are taking tons of AP classes, right? That also holds a lot of weight. And then it's their test scores. I think when we were going through COVID, of course, a lot of schools were going test optional. What we're noticing is that a lot of schools are now, they're going to be requiring test scores. And then activities surprisingly holds a little bit more weight than your personal statement. I was actually talking to Ms. Chapman today, and she was helping me kind of go through this presentation. But whenever students are applying to highly selective colleges, you have to imagine that maybe they're getting 15,000 college apps and they're only going to take 1,500. So students kind of need to kind of understand and think like, what's going to set me apart from 15,000 applications? And so if a student, per se, if they don't excel well in their test scores, however, they're a phenomenal writer, maybe they have a book published, things of that sort, you can look them up on the internet, that may hold a little bit more weight than like their test scores per se. Also personal statement, I've seen instances where a student's personal statement kind of held a little bit more weight than their test scores, especially since schools were test optional. And so for the most part, this is kind of like a basis. Demonstrated interest holds the least amount of weight. However, it is helpful. And we'll kind of talk about summer bridge programs in a little bit. And then also letters of recommendation. Most of your highly selective schools will be asking for these. Your schools like UT, Texas A&M, they actually do not want letters of recommendation. They're getting too many college applications. It's too much. They don't have that kind of time. And so essentially it's going to be grades, the kind of school they're coming from, rigor, test scores, and then their extracurriculars. Also, I typically tell students, for the most part, you want to find an activity that you do really well at, and then you want to stick with it. I've often seen students are like, well, I'm the president of these 3 clubs. And while that does look really great, however, we want to show kind of, we want to show a common interest across the board. And so typically students are over involving themselves for the sake of college applications, and we never want to do that. Students just need to be able to kind of convey their interests and their personality across the board. And so everything kind of just needs to be seamless. Moving to the next slide. And so Naviance, one way that students can do that, we reference the scattergrams again and again with students. If a student is interested in applying to Rice, but they're not quite sure where they stand or what their chances might be, the scattergrams is a good start. It's a good indicator. For one, in Naviance, the scattergrams has it has information dating back to 2011. So alumni from Carnegie 2011, you'll be able to see, oh, these are the students who got accepted into Rice, and this is where I fall. And so if you kind of fall within those students who got accepted to Rice, even though it's a highly selective school and it doesn't necessarily indicate an acceptance, it does kind of give you like, okay, like I have pretty decent chances of getting accepted into this school. And so I would ideally advise students to stick with maybe 2018, because we know things change from 2011, definitely to 2022. But Naviance is definitely a really good start for students to start planning that, especially if they're a 9th grader and 10th grader. You don't have to wait until you're in 11th and 12th grade to use Naviance. All it is kind of a college and career readiness exploration tool. Not only do the counselors use Naviance to send their transcripts once they're a senior, not only is it a way for us to communicate with students as to kind of like what colleges they're applying to, but it's exploration. So students are kind of interested, oh, I want to go to Carnegie Mellon. They will be able to see, oh, these students from this year applied to Carnegie Mellon, and they either got, accepted or denied. And so Naviance is a really good tool for students and parents. Both have access. Next slide. I think we agreed to do, and I'm kind of working on it in the process, but I think we agreed to do maybe like a little flyer to kind of show you guys like the different things, because Naviance is a session in itself.
Yes,
and so
yes, that's the plan. Yes,
okay.
That's the plan. We're hoping to do that. Yes.
Awesome. So I'm working on that. And so I'm making sure it's easy to read, easy to navigate. And I would much rather have 9th and 10th graders already know how to work Naviance as opposed to when they get to their senior year. And I'm like, Miss, how do I add a school? How does this
Oh,
work?
yeah, when they don't have time for anything.
Yes, exactly. And I don't want them to be the 7 that I have to reach out to because they haven't submitted yet. So yes, Naviance is definitely an amazing tool. And for the most part, Carnegie utilizes it very well. Next slide. All right. And so this is the best depiction or the best illustration of the different types of college applications or timelines that students can apply for. So we'll start with the non-restrictive ones. For the most part, these are going to be your Common App applications. So if a student is applying regular decision, rolling, or early action, these are non-binding, meaning they're definitely going to be less daunting. If a student applies regular decision, it just means that this is the deadline they have to send in their application by, and then this college is going to look at it and they're going to receive their decision in an adequate amount of time. So for example, if I want to say, I think Rice might be December 1st or January 1st, that's their regular decision day. And so that is the absolute last opportunity that a student has to submit their application to that school. Rolling admission is definitely non-binding and is less daunting as well. Basically, what rolling admissions means is that institutions are just receiving applications, and as they come in, they're making a decision. So for example, a school like Rice, where they're going to wait until one of their deadlines to review applications. So for example, if their cutoff date is December 1st, they're not reviewing applications before December 1st. They're going to wait till December 1st, look at everything, and then they're going to start rolling out decisions. But for example, rolling admissions, so a school like the University of Houston, they're more so rolling admissions. So as applications are coming in, they're evaluating them and they're making decisions. And then early action. So all early action means is that a student can apply early and receive a decision early, essentially. So if a student decides to do, this is also non-binding. And with early action, you can apply to as many schools as you'd like. Again, all it means is that if you apply early, you receive a decision early. And I usually encourage this for students because for one, if they're applying to a lot of highly selective schools, it gives them the opportunity, let's say for example, they don't get in, they still have time to bounce back and figure out what their plan B or their plan C is. Now the restrictive ones, early decision and restrictive early action. So early decision, this is binding. When a student is applying early decision, it makes me a little nervous just because I want to ensure that the student understands what this entails and what this means. So if a student decides to apply to a school early decision, this means that if they are to be admitted to this school, they're going. Any other applications, they have to withdraw them, they're not going. If they're to be admitted to this school, they are going. And it's binding because a contract has to be signed between their counselor, the student, and the parent. And so early decision is not bad. We just want to ensure that students understand what that all entails. Also with early decision, if you are accepted to a school and they're like, you know what, we want you. Another thing we just tell students to do is I just say, hey, before you decide to apply early decision, you definitely want to go on the school's website and do the net price calculator. Ideally, a student does need to sit down with their parent and do it because it does ask a lot of income information. And so based on the information that you and the student put into that net price calculator, is going to spit a number out, basically saying, okay, based on this information, this is how much we expect you to contribute to your son or your daughter's education, monetary wise. And so oftentimes, depending on what that number is, it can be kind of intimidating or daunting. And that's when students and their parent kind of come together and be like, hey, do we think this is feasible? Or it's like, no, it's not feasible. And so maybe instead of doing early decision, maybe the student will do regular decision or early action. So again, early decision is not a bad thing. We just want to make sure students understand all the various facades that comes with early decision. And then with restrictive early action, this isn't binding. The only one that's binding is early decision. The only thing with restrictive early action is that they are, and I think Yale and Harvard do this one, but the only thing with restrictive early action is that they cannot apply ED or EA to any other schools. And so they just have to wait until their decision comes in. And then based on that, that's how they kind of decide how they're going to move. So it's not binding. It's just if they do decide to apply REA to a school, which is, we don't really get too many of these. They're just restricted from applying early decision or early action to other schools. They really can only do regular decision. And so these are all the different kind of terminology. So that's why when a student is like, hey, I'm applying EA to 7 schools, but I'm doing early decision to this school. So that's what that terminology means. Next slide. And so this is kind of, this graphic helps, it really helps with students because it lets them know essentially, okay, here we go, early action. It just means you apply early, you get an early decision. Also with early action or with early decision, the agreement is binding. With early action, they can apply to other schools. However, they do need to let their schools know by May 1st what they are going to do. May 1st, we usually call decision day. And then also with regular decision, they can also apply to other schools, but they do need to let their schools know by May 1st where they are going to be applying. So as you can see, the one that's I guess the most daunting is the early decision, the ED, because for one, you do get a decision early, but it is binding. So, oh, I'm sorry, next slide. Oh, and so most of your students, if they are applying to these highly selective schools, are definitely using the Common App. And in Common App, it can be kind of confusing, as well as Naviance, because Common App and Naviance do talk and they do sync. So if a student, again, Naviance is where the counselors are going to be sending all their transcripts, all their documentation, letters of recommendation, any kind of counselor recommendations they may need, Also, they ask for like different kind of school reports to schools. And so Miss Chapman and Mr. Frau are sending all that stuff through Common App. And so oftentimes, again, like for example, today, a student was like, well, Miss, they were one of our 7. They were, Miss, I already submitted my college application. What are you talking about? I'm like, well, in Naviance, we don't have anything listed. Turns out the student used Common App, but they never sync their accounts. So if you're using Common App, the student does have to match their account to Naviance. And so then once they match their account, all their schools popped up. And so it's like, oh, okay, interesting. So Common App is definitely it's the elites of them all, I would say, but also it can be kind of confusing because in Common App, you're going to see like if a student is applying to Rice or Carnegie Mellon, they're going to have to state how they're applying to the school. Are you doing early action? Are you doing early decision and stuff like that? And so for the most part, I know in the summers, I wasn't at Carnegie this past summer, so I can't speak to that, but typically in the summers, we do try to pull these students in, the juniors, to kind of get them to start thinking about these things early. Because me personally, I would hate for it to be almost December 1st and nothing has been done. We try to get the students to understand that there's deadlines, and if your schools aren't in Naviance in a sufficient amount of time, the counselors don't know and their stuff won't get sent. So Common App is definitely going to be for those highly selective schools. And on the next slide, I believe I have Applied Texas. Applied Texas, they don't really use these deadlines. They really just use priority and regular deadline. All priority deadline means is that if you apply by this deadline, you'll be considered for the pool of scholarships that this school has to offer. All regular deadline means is that this is the absolute last day that you can apply to this school. And this is mainly for your Texas schools. I do know some of your more selective ones like Rice, they don't use Apply Texas, they do use Common App. And then next slide. And then summer bridge programs. There was actually, I believe, a lot of interest in this on the first week. And so we've actually, since during that time, we've had a lot of, I guess, organizations reach out to us and they want, Carnegie students to apply to their programs. And I'll kind of talk a little bit about the ones that I have listed on here. But these kind of what we're talking about, that demonstrated interest, these are opportunities for your 9th, 10th, and most of the 11th graders to kind of visit these campuses, do summer camps and stuff like that. And while some of them do kind of cost money, some of them do offer scholarships. I think Summer Discovery, so this is one of the big ones, and it is one of the more expensive ones, but Summer Discovery is a really good one. They have a plethora of opportunities for students. And so they might have scholarships. I did email someone, I'm waiting for them to get back to me, but trying to see like what we can do as far as to kind of offset the cost for those. On the next slide, there's Discover U. So Discover U actually partners with HISD. So there is a MOU with HISD in place. Trying to actually get them on campus, that would be great. But Discover U, they call them flows, and they're essentially just opportunities for students during the summer to travel. And they're actually the cheapest. So oftentimes the family or the student may have to pay something, but it's definitely not as much as Summer Discovery. And so Discovery is definitely a really big one. I'm trying to work on, I'm scheduling it to go out probably on Friday, but on the next slide, I'll talk about it, I'm sorry. So the British American Foundation of Texas, they actually reached out to us 2 weeks ago. They're going to be on campus December 5th during the students' lunch. And so I think they said they have quite a few spots available, and they're willing to cover plane cost, flights, lodging, they cover all that. However, there's an application process that the student has to go through. And so they will be on campus on the 5th, which I do believe is a Monday. And the students have the opportunity to come in, meet with them, ask questions and stuff like that. And again, I do have something scheduled to go out via Naviance, talking about the day that they are going to be on campus and then some of the other opportunities that are coming up. The next one I believe is, okay, so Oxbridge, they actually reached out to me, I think like 3 weeks ago. They were originally trying to get DeBakey students. And so typically I'm like, well, can I open this up to Carnegie students too? Like, is that okay? And they were like, yes, absolutely. And so they do have, some of the opportunities do cost a little bit more than others, but there were some that were a little affordable, and they do have scholarships. They actually sent me a brochure, and so I can ensure that that gets out to you guys as well. But they also do a lot of opportunities like Italy. They also go to England and stuff like that. So they have a lot of overseas opportunities. This one does. Next slide. And this is more so for the seniors. It's just a financial aid requirement. It's a graduation requirement. This is the second year that it's been a thing. And so we're just letting seniors know. Actually, I kind of wanted to dispel a myth because when I was meeting with one senior today and I was like, hey, well, do you have intentions of applying for financial aid? Because students, you can either do the application or you can sit with your parent and you can do the opt-out form. That'll satisfy the graduation requirement as well. But I was meeting with a student and I'm like, well, we're probably not going to do FAFSA because, you know, my dad doesn't want me to take out loans and stuff like that. All the financial aid application does is just see what you're eligible for. And so, you know, some students are like, well, you know, my parents say, you know, we kind of make too much. And that's understandable. I usually tell students they're going to offer those loans to everybody. Students who come from families that don't make as much, all the way to students who come from families who do make a lot. They're going to offer those loans to everyone. However, I usually tell students you do not have to take them. All the application does is tell you what you're eligible for. Now, there are often times where students will complete a scholarship application, but a financial aid application has to be on file. So I just kind of wanted to say that the application does not, you're not applying for loans, you're just saying what you're eligible for. And you do not have to take out those loans. But I usually tell students, you know, just sit down with your parents, you know, you guys talk about, you know, what option is best for you. But I usually do encourage students to submit the application, whether you think you might receive anything or not. Just because if they get a scholarship, most of the times they do want a financial aid application on file. Next slide, I think that's everything actually. Oh yes, so Khan Academy, of course, Naviance. We did receive the hot scholarships for January. And so I sent it out. I believe I just sent it to the seniors. I did actually. I sent it to the seniors and their parents, but there are some opportunities on there for underclassmen. So I'll make sure to send that out to you guys as well. Next slide. I'm sorry, guys, I have dogs. Yes, the hot scholarship. So we did get the January one and I'll send that out to you guys. They're doing it 2 months in advance now. To give students more time to apply for them. Because I know it's kind of hard if you're like, here's a November hot scholarship, and you only have a month to work on it. And so they're doing like November and December and January. So students have ample time to work on those scholarships. And then for this little QR code here, I do send a lot of information through Naviance, but I know not all parents may have access to it. I usually send to the student and the parent. So I haven't sent out anything yet. If you've been on the previous weeks, on the previous calls, I haven't sent anything through here yet because I think there was only like maybe 6 people who filled it out. So if you are interested in the emails that I send out, if you're interested in receiving those as well, if you're not in Naviance, you can scan that QR code. And it's just a quick little form to fill out. And then eventually I'll create, I guess a little like forum to send out to you guys. And then that's it. So, we have plenty of time for questions. Let's see.
Thank you so much, Ms. Galloway. Yes, we do have some time, and let me see if we have questions in the chat.
I see one says, if you apply ED, when do you receive a response? Ooh, yeah. So most schools and this is just hypothetically speaking. So I always like to use Rice. Let's say Rice, their ED decision, their absolute last day to apply ED, let's just say it's like December 1st. And so the student, for one, has to make sure that the application gets sent in. And then I usually tell students, once you send in your application, that's not it. Typically, they give you credentials to log into a portal, or they'll send you an email saying, you know, thank you for your application. However, we still need this. Maybe it's a transcript, maybe it's test scores. And so students just have to ensure that they get all that stuff in. If it's transcripts, then the counselors take care of that through Naviance. But if it's test scores, then the student needs to log into their College Board account and have that stuff sent over to that school. Most of the times, the personal statements are done in the application, but most of the times they'll tell students like you'll receive a decision, hypothetically speaking, in 3 weeks. It just depends on the school. But I usually tell students, you know, just if you're applying ED, just be mindful of the net price calculator. That's the main thing, because I would hate for it to be an instance where a student actually got accepted, but they see that price and they're like, oh, like, ooh, how am I going to afford this kind of thing? So that's kind of the big thing. Keisha, what kind of internships they offer. If it's the summer bridge programs, it's mainly like opportunities like to travel. So I know with summer discovery, it just they have a ton, but the thing is they are the most expensive. So it might be like I saw a lot of stuff at UCLA and it's different opportunities at UCLA. So they may have like an engineering camp at UCLA, or they may have like a creative writing camp at that school. It just kind of like varies, but they have like a ton of stuff. But I can send that stuff out to you guys as well. Are students the only ones to get on Naviance? Oh no, you guys have access to Naviance too. If you let's see.
So we will have a separate session or a newsletter just devoted to Naviance because that's like a topic on its own. So we will have to address that separately, but parents do have access.
Yeah, if you can, I would say just send me an email. I'll put my email in the chat and then I'll be sure I'll ask what your student's name is and then I'll be sure that you guys get access. But yeah, every parent has access to Naviance. It's like a code that you have to do and all this other stuff. I think that's it.
When do the students get the PSAT score reports?
Ooh, PSAT. That is a good question. Actually, I do not know, but I can find out for you guys.
It
Oh,
should,
eight
I
and
got an
oh,
email
yeah.
saying December 6th.
yeah, I think it should be sometime in December because I know when we applied to high school, January 10th was the deadline and we already had our PSAT by then.
Yeah, I know that I know seniors, if they took the SAT in October, some of them are getting their scores in. Let's see.
Do we have a graduation date for class 2023? Maybe this is a better question to
Ah,
I can
they,
speak to that actually.
oh,
This
thank
is
you.
Susan Hawes. Really, we don't know yet because Carnegie does not set their own graduation date. The school district does. That is centrally planned because we use district facilities for it. So that will probably be released in like late March, early April. That's what I can tell you.
Thank you so much. Yeah, you've answered here. How to search merit-based scholarships. Ms. Galloway, I guess this is for you. How do they search merit-based scholarship?
For merit-based scholarships, oftentimes so what most of the highly selective schools, what they do is essentially the student sending in, and again, it depends on the school, the student just sending in their application. After they look through it, that determines whether or not they will get like a merit-based scholarship. I know today, I don't remember the school and I don't know the student. She didn't say, but Ms. Chapman was saying that a school called her and we had a fire drill right when it happened. But a school called her and was like, hey, we're thinking about offering this student a full ride. We're in a committee meeting right now. And that's how most of the highly selective schools do it. They do it committee. Whereas like your UH or UTSA, we're like our school is assigned an admissions counselor and they're essentially looking over the applications and then it goes on to someone else. But with most of the highly selective schools, it's committee based. And so she was just saying, but they were like, hey, we'll offer this student a scholarship. We're in a committee meeting right now looking at their application, but we need like their cycle 1 grades or something like that. So oftentimes with the merit-based ones, it's just a matter of like sending in your application and, if the committee is reviewing it and they're impressed, and most of the time that's what, kind of signifies a merit-based scholarship. But also there's also other like opportunities, and these are mainly like your state schools. But again, I was talking about that priority deadline. If you just submit your application by that day, then you're eligible for the funds that the school is going to be giving students.
Great. The summer bridge programs, are they for particular age grade?
No, when I was looking at them, they for the most part they were across the board. Summer, so like I said, the summer discovery, they have the most options. I think they offer as low as 8th grade, to be honest. But some do middle school, but for the most part, they're 9th, 10th, and 11th. And I think with Discover You, at least the district partners with them, they do some senior ones too as well.
Okay. And there's a question if Carnegie is adding class rank or GPA for juniors in their report card.
No, I know they don't do it on the report card, and I'm also not sure exactly how Carnegie does it specifically, but I do know that the juniors will get they'll get their transcript essentially, and so they'll get their transcript, and their transcript will say their GPA and their class rank. Now, when they become seniors and they're sending the counselors are sending their transcripts off, Carnegie is technically a non-ranking school, and that's actually works out to their benefit, unless they're top 10%, because if you're top 10%, you're automatically admitted to if you're top 10%, you're automatically admitted to any Texas school, with with the exception of Rice, your private schools. But for the most part, Carnegie is non-ranking, which is good, because let's say, for example, you have a student with like a 4.7 GPA, but they're not in top 10%, they may be ranked 50 out of 200 students. It doesn't look, it doesn't look like they're not performing well, but they are. And so on some of their transcripts, when they get sent, unless they're top 10%, their rank will not be on there. And that's me personally, that's good, because all students at the Bakey perform fairly well.
Yeah. So there's a question from a 10th grade parent. My son is in 10th grade. I've never heard of him meeting with counselor. When do kids start meeting the counselors to talk college prep? Does this have to be prompted by him? I'm also a 10th grade parent, and I know that they do have a talk in at the beginning of 9th grade about the graduation requirements, and then they kind of they do keep them informed about colleges coming in, as far as I know, but they're not invited, right?
Yeah, so with the college visit, since the seniors they get filled up so fast, they do really only offer it to seniors in the fall semester, the college visits. But in the spring semester, she does open it up to seniors. Now, it kind of what you were saying, whenever they're in their 9th and 10th grade, they more so get conversations about like looking over their transcript and making sure they're meeting graduation requirements. But I have had some students who if they do want to start talking college, that's fine. I've had them just email me. I just look at my calendar and I meet with them if they so please. But as far as like college stuff, they don't really get those conversations until they're in 11th grade. Like 9th and 10th is more like, are you on track to graduate? Stuff like that. Do you have the credits you need to graduate and all that? But like I said, there have been some underclassmen who've been like, hey, like I just want to talk over this process. Like, is that okay? And I'll usually schedule some time to meet with them.
Sure. So they can ask for it, and so this is correct. They can be prompted. Yep. Okay. There's another question. How much do the College Board awards help with college applications? For example, the AP Scholar National Hispanic Recognition Program. Those are
they're more like bragging rights. Just found out recently, but they're not necessarily scholarships. They're more so, and they're phenomenal bragging rights, but they're not scholarships. So sometimes, like you said, it does help with college applications. It looks good because it means out of that kind of demographic of students, they performed really well based on like past data. And so it does look good. I definitely would tell a student to definitely add that on there because it does look good, but it's not a scholarship per se. And they usually get like a whole certificate, like they get the certificate gets sent to the school or something like that. So it's a good honor for sure.
Yeah. How do you input your child's GPA into Naviance so you can use the graph to see the likelihood of getting into a particular college?
Oh, okay. So for the most part, their GPAs should already be in Naviance. Naviance syncs with Power Schools, and so it should already be in there. But if it's not, that's interesting. It might be because they're a 9th grader too. That could also be one as well. The only reason I can see their GPA not being in there is if they're a 9th grader.
Yeah, so Sarah, what grade is your child?
But they could go with what's in like that little Power Schools. Oh, junior.
Oh, junior.
Oh.
So it should be
I'll
on
have to
there.
see that. Yeah, I would have to see their name to go on there.
Okay. If you can send a quick email to Ms. Galloway. She put her email in the chat, so everybody has her email. So yeah.
And I'll let you guys know. I'm sorry if my computer dies. I'm looking for my charger, but I might have left it at the Bakey today. I mean, Carnegie today.
It's okay. It's okay. Okay, if anyone has any more questions, you can just, oh, there's another question. Great.
Yes. Carnegie
Hi.
uses weighted. They use weighted. Now on their transcripts, if they just want a copy of their transcript, the seniors, because I don't have the other students. Only the seniors can get access to their transcripts if they ask for it. Now, I'm sure if an underclassman goes to their counselor like, hey, can I have a copy of my transcript? I'm sure that'll be fine. But on their transcript, it says weighted on there. And colleges will see weighted as opposed to unweighted. But some colleges might ask as well. They may ask like, hey, on your transcript, like, what does it say? Some have both and some just have, but we use weighted. The district goes off of a weighted GPA scale, but on their transcript, it will have both. Is last semester? No, not really.
Is the last semester grade of senior year important?
Not really. I mean, as long as the student isn't bombing every class, but I do tell, because some of them are like, well, I'm really concerned that like they can withdraw my admissions decision because I'm not doing that well this semester. And it's like they probably have B's or something. But I mean, it is important because we want them to perform well. And some, it's mainly your highly selected schools that might, it's a huge might, they might ask for their last semester grades. But at that point, like kind of once they've already been admitted, I mean, it's kind of hard to kind of take that decision away from them unless they've done something like.
And I have an observation. I heard that a lot of the schools, they would take students into not a freshman year, but they will also take them into the second year. So if that happens, I guess it will be important for them to show their senior year transcripts as well.
Oh, yes. So typically once students decide like, okay, it's the second semester, like, okay, this is where I want to go. I'm going here. Yes, all schools will require a final transcript. And it's more so just to show that like you graduated. It's not more so looking at their grades, but yeah, all of their schools will request a final transcript to be sent. And it's just to kind of make sure that the little Texas stamp seal is on there. It's been signed by their registrar and just to show that they've graduated. And I'm really not more so looking at like the grades, is just to show that they met the requirements to graduate. Does home location play a role in college admissions? No, not necessarily. For the most part, they're looking at like how they perform academically, if there's any special talents that they have. I think Ms. Chapman was telling me today, like a lot of students from Carnegie are they're poet laureate, and I was like, oh wow, I actually like didn't know that. But no, for the most part. Now, if there's something about their home location that they feel needs to be added into their, if there's something that about their home location that they feel like needs to be added in their application that couldn't go out, they can do that. Personal statements is one, that's your college essay, but also many of these schools are going to have supplementals. And so all it is maybe like 4 or 5 short response questions. And so oftentimes they give them the opportunity to kind of like speak more in those. And they're more so looking at how well students write.
I am not seeing any more questions in
The ranking from junior year.
Oh, the ranking from junior year for college app.
Oh yeah. So if they're not top 10%, then their rank will not be on their transcript. Because if they're top 10%, for one, in the summers, if we know a student's top 10%, we kind of try to work with them as soon as possible. Because for one, they're automatically accepted to any school in Texas, any public school in Texas at least. And so we want to make sure that, well, with Texas, UT Austin, they're the exception, they're top 6%. But other than that, if they're not in top 10%, then if they would like to know their rank, then that's fine. They can ask Miss Maxey or they can ask their counselor, but it will not be included on their transcript. And it's just kind of fair. It's just, I feel like it's unfair to discredit a student who has, again, like I said, like maybe a 4.7 GPA, but they're not top 10%. And that it may not seem as if they rank as high because again, all the students at Carnegie are very high performing. The senior year ranking.
The senior year ranking, yeah.
They usually get that, for the most part, they'll get their transcript like at the beginning of the school year. And then they'll get rankings are finalized in October for the most part. That's how I've seen it across all campuses. Oh, for the code, I don't have it. Counselors
The
do.
counselor, yeah, you would email your counselor, either Miss Chapman or the other counselor, and they will send it to you.
I
It's
wish I did though, because that would kind of
Yeah.
eliminate like, like a middleman or a middle person.
Yep.
But yeah, their senior year ranking, they'll get it'll be updated in October. That's why I tell students if because it can change slightly. I've never seen it change a lot, but if a student is in their junior year and their first semester grades can kind of they might fall or they might jump. And that's mainly because, let's say, for example, some students leave Carnegie. It's really hard for students to come in, but let's say like a student may leave Carnegie, then the rank may change. But typically in October, they get kind of like a final rank. And then typically either towards the end of their junior year, they'll get their ranking just so they know where they are. So if you do have juniors currently, they won't really know their rank until second semester, probably more so towards the end. But no worries if you do have a junior. I have always held like a summer camp, and I know with COVID it's been kind of hard to do that. It's been virtual, but I try to be very intentional because, like I said, I don't want it to be almost December and students haven't submitted yet. So typically in the summer, kind of similar to this, like it'll be kind of tiered. It'll be sessions, and so for the first session, building your college list or understanding, your academic profile. 2, starting your personal statement. How do we get that started? So you'll probably get that stuff maybe closer to the end of the semester, but we usually do that stuff starting in like July, October, where we start sitting down with students in the summer just to kind of get a head start.
The counselor sent an email November 9th with the code for Naviance access. I think there was an email, right? There was an email with the code, but if you never received it, I'm pretty sure you can still email your counselors and they'll be able to send that out to you.
I'm also going to ask them if there's any way that, well, probably not, because they're the counselor, probably not.
Did that go to the students or parents? I think that went to the parents, as far as I know. There's an ACE Mentor Houston program. For students.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay. So it went to the kids then, to the students.
But I know, well, often, because when I send emails to students in Naviance, I send it to the student and the parent will get the email if they're registered. So maybe the student probably did receive it, but the parent probably did too, if they're registered.
So Sarah has a Naviance question because she can see the weighted GPA in the profile, but it doesn't fill in when you plug in a college to see the chances of getting in. Maybe others have the same.
Yeah, so in Naviance, there's a tab that says colleges, and it's colleges I'm thinking about. You would have to add maybe like 1 or 2 colleges on there. And then once you add colleges on that list, you should be able to go, I think it says like more, and it says scattergrams. And I think your student would be like the blue dot, and then all the other dots would be previous students from Carnegie. I know that was a lot, but I
for the yeah, I would just get your students get your child's input and see if they do see their grades in there, like if it's updated, and then just to check if it's correct.
The difference between weighted
Well, for the difference between weighted and unweighted, I would say you will need to watch this recording because you did talk about it in the beginning.
Yeah, it's like all the students take AP classes. So your AP classes or your honors classes, which Carnegie doesn't have those, but your AP classes are gonna have more weight as opposed to
and this was covered at the beginning of this presentation. I highly recommended the architect and
the ACE. Yeah, no, you're absolutely right.
Naviance.
Thank you for saying that. I'll send something out about that because we partner with them as well.
Oh, okay, you do. Okay, the architect. Okay. Yeah, that's perfect. Please feel free to put more questions in the chat. I do want to give floor to Susan because I know that she has a lot of experience
Yes.
with Carnegie and the kids in Carnegie.
There's nothing like hearing from a parent who went through.
I know, exactly, right?
Well, okay. I hope I say things that are useful to people. What I can do is tell you a little bit, and stop me when I start rambling, about how our two older kids approached college and how we approached college with them. One of my sons, I have twins. One chose our neighborhood high school. He could have gone to Carnegie, and Carnegie was too small and quiet for him. And Carnegie had about 600 students at that time. So it's a little bigger and noisier now, but really not by a whole lot. And then my other son went to Carnegie, and Carnegie was his dream high school, and he loved every minute of it, or at least I think he did. He might say so differently now. And then I have a child who's a junior this year. And so we're starting on this college walk again. The pandemic changed some things, and what we tried to do with our older kids was, if we were near a college, we would go visit it. And it wasn't about, do you like this college? Do you want to go here? It was about, this is a state school in a big city. What do you think? This is a small liberal arts college. What do you think? This is a small school in a college town. How does that feel to you? Which has been really hard to do the last couple of years. Nobody has really gone anywhere. But I can speak a little bit to things that were brought up tonight, especially with financial aid. My son, who chose not to come to Carnegie, really his college choices shed some light on that for me, because turns out he wasn't interested in small colleges, no matter how selective they were or how fun they seemed. And he ended up in the honors college at a big state school. And he wasn't top 10%, by the way. He was a strong student who took AP classes, but he was not the top of the top. And he chose to apply to the state school. It happens to be the University of Oregon, but he applied to the flagship state school out where my husband's parents live. And he applied to the honors college there, and they had merit scholarships specifically for out-of-state students that did not cut us completely back to paying in-state tuition, but they put a pretty big dent in it. And I remember talking him through it a couple of nights when he got discouraged, because I just ran my GPA, and I'm not going to qualify for that scholarship. So maybe I shouldn't even do this. And I told him, you submit your application and let them do the math. And as it happened, he got that scholarship. I think he was more surprised than anybody else. And he's been there for a couple of years, and he's been pretty happy. He earned enough AP credits that he could have graduated in 3 years. And we asked him if he was going to do that. And he sort of looked at me like I was crazy and said, why would I do that? I'm having fun. And I'm pleased to report that having fun does not mean getting bad grades. He's done very well, which is good, because in order to keep his scholarship, he had to keep grades.
Oh, that's awesome. That's what we want.
I hope so. My Carnegie son took a different path. He applied to highly selective schools, and he shot for the moon, and he landed at a good place for him. But all of the highly selective schools that he applied to ended up turning him down. So that does happen. And I think that is a warning to us to know that even though all of our kids could do well at those schools, and we shouldn't discourage them from applying, if a school admits 15% of applicants, that means that some great people get told no. And he ended up at a school that was a logical choice for him. And he's been very happy there, and they offered him merit aid. And he's working really hard, and it's a lot tougher than it looked from the outside. I can tell you which school it is if anybody wants to know, because certainly it's a Texas school, and they're deliberately trolling for the kids who could have gotten into Rice but didn't. Okay, somebody says, yes, please. It's University in San Antonio. They're a small school. They're working on being nationally ranked. They just applied to US News and World Report to be nationally ranked instead of regionally ranked this year. And that was accepted. And I think they ended up being the number 50 liberal arts college nationally, which is really pretty impressive.
Wait, it's Trinity? Your voice broke off. Oh, it's
sure.
Trinity.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Trinity. Sorry.
It's a great
got
school.
the little notice that my internet connection is unstable.
Oh, okay. Yeah, maybe that's why.
Yeah. And I put my headphones on. Somebody mentioned in the chat earlier that when I introduced myself, my voice was breaking up. And I don't know if my computer is getting old and the microphone doesn't maybe work so well anymore, but there are times when I have to really lean in and yell, and I hate doing that. So I'll try the headphones. And again, the merit money that he got we did not have to apply for those scholarships. We filled out the forms and the university decided who they were looking at for merit scholarships. So, always read the rules, but when it comes to the scholarships, the universities have their own rules, and just make sure you know what they are. Fill out the form they tell you to fill out, and sometimes that's all you have to do. And we're starting on this with my junior. We've tried to do a little bit of what Ms. Galloway called exposure. And our first college tour was a disaster. I've done a lot of these by now, and my student really did not have a good tour guide. And so I know a lot of good things about that school because one of my nephews actually attended it for a while. He then transferred to somebody else, to a different school, because they didn't have his major. But my daughter didn't get to see any of the things that were great about that school. So she came away from that almost disinterested in college. I thought, oh no, no, that's the wrong reaction. This is just the first time you'll go someplace better. And this fall, Columbus Day weekend, we had a family wedding, and there's a school in that town. And so we went to visit it. And that time she stepped onto campus, walked 20 feet onto campus and said, oh, I could be here for 4 years. And I'm like, you haven't even talked to anybody yet. So we went from one end of the spectrum to another end of the spectrum in reactions with this child. And turns out that school is extremely selective. And so now I think my job with this youngest child is to find similar but less selective schools. And she should apply to that school that she fell in love with. There's nothing to lose. But they only, they accept 15% of their applicants. So somebody gets told no. Somebody asked which majors my sons are pursuing. One is a history major. The one at the Big State School Honors College is a history major. And my Trinity kid is an engineering major, which really is kind of reversed because Trinity classifies itself as a liberal arts school. I can say that their engineering program is a general engineering degree, whereas if you go to a more technical school, they'll break out the different types of engineering. But it's nonetheless tough. It's lots of math, and they have him doing design from the very beginning. So I'm not here to shill for that particular school. I can just say that we were pleasantly surprised by how rigorous the program turned out to be. I don't want to talk everybody's ears off. Do you have any more questions? Oh, I guess the last thing I can say is everybody gets in somewhere. You will survive it, and so will your child, and they will go to college. Don't lose faith.
Thank you so much, Susan. And thank you, everybody, for being here. And of course, Ms. Galloway, thank you so much for the great presentation. And you have her email. Please email any questions you have. And Susan, we hope to see you again here. We intend to have those more.
You're welcome.
I really
Thank you
appreciate
so
that
much.
you guys have a parent on the call, actually, because I'm not a parent yet, but you have someone who can actually be like, oh, I actually went through this with my student. This is what happened. And I'm just giving you guys kind of like basic knowledge and stuff. But I think the parent aspect is like extremely helpful. So I think that was kudos to you guys on that.
Oh, thank you. Well, thank you so much. And we will be posting a recording of this presentation and meeting. And yeah, please let us know if you have any more questions. Thank you so much. Have a great evening, everyone. Bye.